Hi, it's Anne-Marie from Charmed Life Therapy, and that's a breezier greeting than I felt like I was going to give. I was feeling really angry till I've run through and looked at some more of the documents, and this is what annoys me about this case, because I don't want to be feeling angry about anything. But the first two things that popped through this morning on my emails was abuse in my eyes, in terms of Isabela Ferrer's attorney's responses to Justin's team asking for the option to use alternative service because nobody is accepting their subpoena, including this very fancy law firm, Sanford Michelman. Now, it's interesting, is this? So this is Isabela Ferrer, who's fastly losing my sympathy and patience since I last made a video. Now, this apparently is a very high-priced, very fancy Los Angeles-based attorney, regularly used for regulatory matters by some very high-priced CEOs or C-suite people. Everybody that's got a C in their title uses this chap, and he's very successful. So Isabella is portrayed often as this lowly waitress. And actually that in itself is quite interesting. And I don't want to vilify anybody. I need to vent a bit, but I don't want to vilify at all. But I'm going to vent. But I don't want you to take it to heart. But yeah, I kind of find this interesting. Because if she genuinely is a member of the Clooney family, which people are saying, and so she has a big support system, even if she's like more indirectly connected, if you like. For sure, there's people she can go to, isn't there, that have power, if she genuinely is a member of that family, as is reported. I can't seem to prove it properly in my minimal research, but there you go. But yeah, she's portrayed as this jobbing actress that has waitressed in between times or whatever. And it popped into my head, aside from this, before I came into all of this, going back to when Blake dropped Book Bonanza on Young Lily, Young Atlas. It was like, drop what you're doing and come do this, wasn't it? And the other day, just over the weekend, I was just thinking, that in itself is interesting and shows Blake in a certain light, because if Isabella truly is a jobbing waitress and she needs that money to support her while she looks for work as such, it's like, drop this and come here. It's like, that's letting the restaurant supposedly know, isn't it, on the day that she has to go do this, that she can't work or whatever. And yeah, it's an opportunity, you'd say. She has to go for it. But at the same time, it kind of shows Blake's state of mind, doesn't it? That nobody else has something that they might be committed to, that if they have to drop it at a moment's notice, there might be repercussions for. It's like there's no concept of, in Blake's eyes, there's no kind of question about it, is there really? And some might argue, well, that's what you should do in life. You should just prioritise where your opportunities are. But me, I'm more like thinking, what might she have lost that she might need to rely on if nothing comes of taking that opportunity? You know what I mean? So that was on my mind. And, you know, I'm trying to put myself all the time in having some sympathy for this girl, because I think, like, well, I wouldn't want to be in that situation. And now I'm second thinking all of that, to be fair, because what they're trying to say here today, mainly this attorney on behalf of Isabella, is once more, they're taking an opportunity to call Justin an abuser. They're bringing up Blake's narrative, basically, and calling Justin an abuser because he is contractually obliged to pay Isabella's legal fees for anything that arises, any problem that arises out of her involvement in the movie. And he's trying to say that Justin wants to steer a certain narrative, like holding it over her head. But it's like I've just had it's like the other day when Manat released all those emails and messages and stuff saying it supported their narrative, and everybody's like out there going, What do you mean? That seems like Team Baldoni material. What the hell? Why are you reading everything differently to us? And it feels like that with this, because what is she saying to me when you run through these documents, and I'll run through them in a minute, the attachments to his argument over why they shouldn't be able to subpoena in an alternate way, and you're thinking, mate, you're taking all this time to approach the court, why don't you just accept the chuffing subpoena on her behalf and have done with it? What's the problem? So they're doing all of this, and I've lost my train of thought now because I'm so cross, really. But yeah, I'll run through these documents, but basically what they're trying to say is that Justin has to pay for Isabella's legal fees, but he shouldn't expect that that makes her part of his team or part of his defence. But why should he pay if she's going to accuse him of all kinds of stuff or whatever, or call him a harasser or an abuser? Why should he pay her attorney's fees? Why should he pay her to be on Blake's team if that's what she so chooses? So in these kinds of things, it has to go to this like mitigation service, this JAMS, this judicial, oh God, it's arbitration and remediation basically. So it's often like a former judge or something. I think we've come across this idea before where they have to look at every decision. I think it's like the same thing as when somebody's awarded costs and legal things. Every document has to be gone over and decided by an outside party as to whether it's relevant, whether it should be classed under expenses or not. And this is the same thing. So she kind of has to prove that whatever she's required to pay out, it has to be signed off by an outside party. So I'm going to run through some of these things, and I want you to make up your own mind as to which side sounds more harassing. Team Wayfarer or Team Sanford Mickelman. So the first kind of one of these attachments is, so he's done a series of attachments and including emails, and also some random, people not slating or even necessarily on the internet, as if that once again is Justin Baldoni's sole responsibility. And it's the same things that have been said time and time again that would end if she just provided whatever she's been asked to provide. Within these communications, it says that she's provided to Blake Lively what Blake Lively asked for in her subpoena, which I asked ChatGPT to, because I have to try and do this quickly because I have got an actual job that needs to be done. And yes, I do blend into the wallpaper in this top, which I'm very aware of. So I just uploaded like the PDFs that were at Blake's subpoena against Justin's subpoena for Isabela, and just asked it to compare them as to which was harder to respond to, basically. I'm just going to bring it up somewhere here, what I asked. And obviously ChatGPT is not entirely accurate, but it's good for giving you a broad generalisation. So can you please compare the Lively subpoena details with the Baldoni subpoena details and tell me which is asking for more and in more complex ways, and which is more intrusive and difficult to execute, please? So that's what I've asked it. So scope, like the Lively one, is extremely broad. It demanded communications, contracts, financial records and documents relating not just to It Ends With Us, but also to her and Ryan Reynolds' businesses, Betty Buzz, Aviation Gin, Mint Mobile, Maximum Effort Productions, etc. Because remember, this one went out at the time when Justin was countersuing. So she complied with this. Time frame, it extended far beyond the movie, reaching into her personal business empire. Now, I don't know if she means Blake's personal business empire, I assume. Could be Isabella's. Intrusiveness, asked for private financial data, communications with her husband, and internal company details. So Isabella's communications with Ryan. Very personal, very burdensome, and involving multiple third parties. Complexity. would require pulling records from multiple entities, law firms, PR firms, social media platforms, and possibly accountants. Coordinating compliance would be a huge undertaking. Conclusion: Blake's subpoena is sweeping. It essentially tries to pry into Isabela's personal, financial, and professional life, not just the film. So this is the other side of things, narrower and more laser focused in ChatGPT's interpretation. So the main requests, and I run through these the other day and there was nothing untoward. Communications with Blake, Baldoni, Heath, Stoney or crew about Baldoni or Heath's behaviour. Any complaints or reports about Baldoni, Heath, Wayfarer or It Ends With Us. Any allegations of harassment, discrimination, retaliation or misconduct. Communications about the marketing plan, any press, promo, PR conversations or documents, I guess. Communications about intimate scenes in the film. Any documents produced in response to other subpoenas in these related cases. Time frame from December 22 to present, focused on the production period forward. Intrusiveness: it doesn't ask for financials, private business documents or family related material, just things directly tied to the film, workplace behaviour, PR and behind the scenes issues. Complexity: mostly communications, emails, text messages and production related documents, manageable compared to Blake's. Conclusion: the Isabela subpoena from the Wayfarers is far more targeted. It's about whether Baldoni or Heath engaged in misconduct and how things were handled during the movie's production and promotion. It's investigative, but not personally invasive. So in comparing it side to side, Blake's looks much broader. It's more intrusive into a personal, family and financial life. And the Baldoni side of things is more targeted, it's narrower, it's even phrased in non-legal terms in my mind in order to sound less threatening and more achievable. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because we've got this broader conversation going on about First Amendment and the right to speak up and the right to defend yourself, and all the content creators most of them having to do this pro se. Isabela is a person non-party related to this, arguably has more at stake, but how is she different in terms of she's been subpoenaed in a case that she'd rather not be subpoenaed in, that she doesn't see why she should because she was just an actress in a movie? How does that make her so much different from these content creators that are being harassed and are having their right to free speech curtailed and all of this, and have had to respond pro se? Isabela gets to approach Sanford Mickelman and have Justin Baldoni pay all her legal fees, and then she gets to accuse him of being a harasser for wanting to subpoena her for information that he has a right to have in order to exercise his First Amendment right to speak in his own defence. It kind of boggles the mind to me at this point that these conversations are still going on. So let's go to this. So Feb 27th, 2025, via electronic mail. This is a letter from Sanford Mickelman to Friedman, and it's regarding the demand for indemnification has to be added to my list of words I can't say. Pursuant to It Ends With Us day/weekly player contract for theatrical motion pictures, dated as of June 21st, 2023, between It Ends With Us Movie LLC and Isabela Ferrer. So, dear Mr. Friedman, this firm represents Isabela Ferrer in connection with disputes arising out of the development, production and or exploitation of the motion picture It Ends With Us, and disputes arising out of the above referenced agreement. Please direct all future communications about those issues to the undersigned. As It Ends With Us Movie LLC and Wayfarer know, Ms. Ferrer has fully provided and performed the services she agreed to render pursuant to the agreement. In connection with the agreement, it ends with us movie LLC, defined in the agreement and referred to in this letter as PSC, agreed to undertake certain obligations to Ms. Ferrer, and more specifically agreed to indemnify Ms. Ferrer with respect to demands, costs and expenses incurred by Ms. Ferrer in connection with the picture. Section 12H of PCS's Standard Terms and Conditions, indemnity provision in brackets, which were attached to and explicitly incorporated into the agreement, reads in relevant part as follows. PSC indemnifies and shall keep the artist fully and effectually indemnified from and against any and all claims, demands, actions, proceedings, costs, damages, liabilities, losses and expenses, including reasonable outside legal costs. No, reasonable. Did it say that she could go to the fanciest, highest price lawyer that she could come up with? Suffered or incurred by the artist, arising in connection with the development, production or exploitation of the picture and all ancillary rights related thereto. Emphasis added in brackets, it says. Ms. Ferrer was served with a subpoena to produce documents, information or objects in connection with the lawsuit titled Lively v. Wayfarer LLC. Case numbers and all of that's dictated. We have enclosed a copy of the subpoena for reference. The subpoena generally demands that Ms. Ferrer respond to the subpoena and produce documents, communications and other electronically stored information. Ms. Ferrer is now incurring and will incur costs and expenses, including legal costs and attorney fees, to appropriately respond to the subpoena, much like the content creators, you might say. And what's kind of also interesting is, what is Isabela's culpability in all of this? What is her personal culpability for making the situation worse, maybe, than it might have needed to be by allowing herself to be co-opted by Blake Lively, as many feel that she was, basically? What narrative was she feeding in Blake Lively's head? She herself, with the actions that she chose to do, for want of a better word, has made her part in this bigger. To me, there's a sense of she's got no responsibility for her own actions and her own decisions here to some extent. And I get that she's young. I am factoring in that she's young and she might be impressionable and all of those things as well. So the subpoena relates to the services Ms. Ferrer provided in connection with the production of the picture, which is interesting because that service is related to sleeping over at Miss Lively's and having pyjama parties and the rest of it as well. For example, request for production number 1 asks Miss Ferrer to produce the documents and communications exchange with any cast or crew members, and remember this is Blake's subpoena, with any cast or crew members of the film during production of the film. Emphasis added. Similarly, request for production number 4 demands the production of Ms. Ferrer's documents or communications concerning reports or complaints of sexual harassment, discrimination, retaliation or any inappropriate conduct during production of the film. Emphasis added. Under New Jersey law, indemnification agreements are interpreted in accordance with the general rules governing construction of contracts. They will provide the indemnity with coverage for the full scope indemnification called for by the agreement. See Moore versus Nayer. The plain language of the contract is the cornerstone of the interpretive inquiry. In commas, when the intent of the parties is plain and the language is clear and unambiguous, a court must enforce the agreement as written unless doing so would lead to an absurd result. Here, the demand being made on Ms. Ferrer through the subpoena falls squarely within the scope of the agreement's indemnity provision. So they want her, Justin, to pay for her response to Blake's subpoena. The plain wording of the subpoena's 6 production categories demonstrate that the costs and expenses Mr. Ferrer, I think it means Ms, but it says Mr, will incur in responding to the subpoena arise in connection with the production of the picture. Indeed, the costs that Ms. Ferrer will incur in responding to the subpoena are the very type of expenses that a production company would be expected to reimburse to an actor who spent only a few days on set and was paid relatively little for her services when that actress is unnecessarily dragged into the extensive and expensive litigation being conducted between a film's producers and others. But you could argue there, couldn't you, that it was her actions off the set that have led to her inclusion in this. It's not necessarily all about what went on that set, isn't it? She's been asked to clarify what went on in the set, because she's been dragged into Blake's narrative in a way. That would be my feeling anyway. And I always hold my hands up and say, well, I'm always going to talk more feelings, because feelings are what bothers us the most in life. So we are demanding that PSC and its manager and member Wayfarer Studios LLC confirm as soon as possible, but no later than Wednesday, March 5th, 2025, that PSC, which is Wayfarer basically, will indemnify Ms. Ferrer for all costs and expenses, including her attorney's fees, that she is incurring and will incur in connection with her response to the subpoena, as PSC is required to do pursuant to the indemnity provision. Absent such confirmation, Ms. Ferrer will be forced to take appropriate action against you to compel compliance with your contractual indemnity obligations to her, and to enforce other statutory and legal remedies available to her to address your misconduct. Nothing in this letter is intended to be or should be construed as a waiver of Ms. Ferrer's rights or remedies, all of which are expressly reserved. Please do not hesitate to contact me to further discuss this matter. And it's signed by Sanford L. Mickelman. Right, there is a footnote there. I don't know if it's relevant. So in the subpoena, the film is defined as the movie It Ends With Us, co-starring Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni. 2. The agreement contains a choice of law provision that selects New Jersey law as the law applicable to the construction and interpretation of the agreement. Oh God. Has that just made things more complicated? Because now this is referring to New Jersey law, and we're already between New York and California and Texas and Nevada, if you bring Perez into it. But isn't that interesting? I mean, that to me is quite a threatening letter. You know, it's like, but you know, like I was just reminded when I talked about emotions there, and the problem that many of us are having with this lawsuit is that we're dealing with it. We're all going through the court filings and stuff and trying to make sense of it as much as we can, and we're having like a visceral emotional response to it. But it's funny, I was doing some coursework yesterday, some new material, and it was saying, you know, that you have to have emotion even in order to make logical decisions, because you can't go through life as a Mr. Spock and just see the logic. So, you know, when you're talking about Judge Lyman, and we get frustrated because it's just like he only wants to see the law and he doesn't want to put two and two together, and he doesn't want to project what that might have done or felt like or anything like that, unless it was in terms of removing that deposition off the docket where he decided what Wayfarer's motivation was in that instant. But we do require emotion to make logical decisions, because if you take emotion out of it, what's interesting is that you're left with all this logic. But because you don't have an emotional feeling about the logical steps, you couldn't decide which step to do in which order. You know, if you had a task to do, because you need that feeling about which one is best to do first and which will feel better, and so it's like you can't entirely remove. So somebody needs to tell Judge Lyman that he can't entirely remove emotion out of all these logical legal things, because the feelings of it all is actually important. I thought that was quite an interesting thing. So let's move along. So the next thing, which is exhibit 3 attachment to this two-part thing that's dropped in today, which is about Isabella and them not wanting to accept alternate service, which, like I say, he could have just said, send me the chuffing subpoena, you know what I mean? So this has come from Lina Friedman on February 28th. So regarding this idea of paying for her legal fees. So dear Mr. Mickelman or Michelman, I'm not sure which it is. As you know, this firm represents Wayfarer Studios LLC, and it ends with us Move It LLC, Wayfarer, in connection with the ongoing litigation against Ryan Reynolds, Blake Lively, and other parties. So again, it's back during that time when there were those two lawsuits, Justin's lawsuit going on as well. I am in receipt of your letter regarding Isabela Ferrer's demand for indemnification pursuant to the above described agreement. Wayfarer will of course honour its contractual obligations to Ms. Ferrer. Please confirm that your letter constitutes notice of a pending claim or claims, specifically Ms. Ferrer's response to the subpoena mentioned in your letter, and the costs and expenses, including reasonable attorney's fees. And again, what is going to class as reasonable attorney's fees when she's gone to the most expensive she could probably find, that Ms. Ferrer is incurring and will incur in connection therewith, and that by your letter Ms. Ferrer demands that Wayfarer undertake the defence thereof and offers to surrender control thereof to Wayfarer, which they're saying as they're trying to co-opt her story to their narrative. But to me, that just makes sense that if you are expecting somebody to pay your legal fees, you can't expect to speak against them. Does that make sense to you? It's like, why would you pay somebody to act against you? It doesn't make sense. Why would anybody agree to that? And I guess there's all, they have a responsibility to protect her, you would say, and all of that. But when it comes down to contracts, I mean, I'm no expert, but to me, that would just make sense that you would expect to become part of the defence strategy if the defence is being asked to pay your expenses. So there's law cited there, case law cited. Now, in this Sanford Mickelman's response, which I don't know whether to go through all of that with you because it's really long. I don't know, and there'll be plenty of people doing it. But they're saying that there's an aspect of this which is a Perez special, that there's one of these is a hallucinatory citation or something. Anyway, there's several cited there, pieces of... Is there several? There's two different ones, I think. Anyway, so we request that you provide the aforementioned confirmation no later than close of business on Tuesday, March 4th, 2025. Nothing contained herein shall be deemed a complete statement or waiver of any legal or factual basis or any right or remedy available to our clients in law and equity, all of which are hereby expressly reserved. And that's signed by Teresa Troupson or Troupson, who seems to be the one keeping track of all the comings and goings and the paperwork. To my mind, she seems to be getting the dirty jobs, I think. So that was Exhibit 3. So Exhibit 4 is like text message chains that have... So we'll step forward a bit in time now to Friday, June the 20th at 2:35 from Mitra Ahurian to Sanford Mickelman, and copying a couple of other lawyers from that firm, John Jameson Hill and Manuel Duran. So the email from Mitra says, so the agreement says that Judge Carpinello has to approve the invoices, but they want to know what happens if he doesn't approve an invoice as is. We don't want a scenario where he's either approving or he's not. We ultimately want it resolved so the invoice is closed out. So if he makes a determination, for example, that X isn't reasonable or related but Y is, that will be his determination, not just yes or no. I assume this is our understanding, given how a court/arbitrator would determine fees, but they want clarity. So Mitra is on Team Wayfarer Baldoni, their side of things. And the response to that, oh no, hang on, it's sometimes they put a document in that's in like reverse date order, and sometimes it's the other way around. So I was looking at these this morning trying to figure out which was in which order. So that was at 2:35 on June 20th, which was actually in response to an earlier email from Sanford Mickelman that had said, isn't this already in the agreement? So they were clarifying, basically. So what else is there? So on Tuesday, June the 24th, Mitra again wrote, "Gentlemen, sorry for the delay. Jams was revising the engaging agreement at my request," in brackets. So Jams is this just the mediators who are going to sign off on all the bills, the invoices. So sorry for the delay. Jams was revising the engaging agreement to reflect the fact that Wayfarer will be paying costs, and I just received it today. Please see attached. As far as the language of the agreement between the parties, we are aligned in our understanding of the agreement, i.e., if an invoice is not approved by Judge Carpinello, Wayfarer is not obligated to pay it. Jams felt the language was not sufficient in terms of instructing Judge Carpinello and giving him the authority to approve in part and reject in part according to his judgment. I think putting that in an email with instructions from both parties should suffice. Please confirm. So the other side is kind of hanging back from doing that in a way, is kind of understanding I'm getting for it, but sometimes I feel a bit thick when it comes to these things. I think my brain just doesn't like it. My brain kind of rejects it because it all seems so pointless and a waste of time and like people farting about basically and like causing themselves aggro where they don't need to. So then there's just the later one, which again is from Mitra, which is July 14th, when they're already having difficulty serving Isabela. And she's put, following up on the attached and below. Also, my colleagues have emailed you twice to confirm that you will accept service on behalf of your client. I'd appreciate a confirmation by the end of day. So there's nothing there really. I mean, this is attached as part of his argument, this Sanford Michelman, but I'm not seeing anything so far where it feels like Wayfarer is being obstructive. You know, he's the one that just does this 1 sentence thing. Isn't this already in the agreement? It's like, why are you asking about it again? You know, and then there's a further attachment. Exhibit 5. Let's see if we can get the dates in the right order. Just bear with me a moment. I might pause. Right, so what it seems to do then is it jumps to August 6th, and John Jameson Hill wrote, "Dear Mr. Cuervos, we returned an executed copy of the Jams engagement agreement to Ms. Ahurian a couple of weeks ago, but we are not sure if she provided a copy of that to Jams. Please see attached. Please let us know if there is any other information you need from Ms. Ferrer's side to move the engagement forward. We look forward to working with Judge Carpinello on this matter." And then the next one is on August 7th, the next day, when Mitra wrote, "Thank you, John. Please confirm your understanding of the agreement between the parties with respect to Judge Carpinello's duties as previously requested below. We are aligned in our understanding of the agreement, i.e. if an invoice is not approved by Judge Carpinello, Wayfarer is not obligated to pay it. Jams felt the language was not sufficient in terms of instructing Judge Carpinello and giving him the authority to approve in part and reject in part according to his judgment. I think putting that in an email with instructions from both parties should suffice. Please confirm. Also, please confirm you will accept service of process on behalf of your client. Reserving all rights." That's Mitra. So you're thinking, what is the problem with what she's asking you to do? What is the big deal? And then on August 7th at 3:39 p.m. So that's strange. So this was earlier then, according to the bloody thing seems all out of order unless I'm going doolally. So this Sanford Michelman has said, "We have a signed agreement. That is what we will agree to in terms of this engagement. This is the very last email on this topic. Your client's delay is just beyond acceptable at this stage. If we do not have our invoices submitted by agreement by Monday, we are absolutely done and will file the previously drafted lawsuit. We are exhausted with these antics. I will assume you disagree, so no need to rhetoric in response. Monday is a hard deadline." So who sounds more threatening and more harassing, do you think? And then there's Mitra on August 7th at 3:41 p.m. I don't know if these emails, will you accept service of process on behalf of your client? This might have been earlier than Sanford's. I've written to check this so I could read it in order, and I'll go back. As mentioned, the clarification was requested by Jams. I asked you to confirm your understanding of Judge Carpinello's authority in performing his duties. So they're just refusing, it would seem, to just confirm what they've asked them to confirm in writing to Jams. That's where it appears to be anyway. So that's it. That's all they've attached, kind of. So let me just check how those messages came in. So August 7th, 3:41. Yeah, so that last one was from Mitra, as I've just read it. So she had to get back to him after he'd been snotty like that. So they're refusing service on behalf of Isabela. So here we go. Let's read document on the docket 666, as if there's a more appropriate number at this point in time. So the instant motion for leave to serve third party Isabela Ferrer by alternative service is yet another attempt by Justin Baldoni and his affiliated entities, collectively Baldoni, and as Perez pointed out, it's a particularly snotty move, this, because instead of saying Wayfarer Parties or it ends with us LLC or any other kind of broader term, it specifically allows them to keep saying Baldoni is a harasser, Baldoni is an accuser, Baldoni is this, Baldoni is that, bang on, which I think is like really unfair. I don't think I'm going to read all of this because it's 23 pages, but we'll just have a quick squeeze through it, I guess, because lots of people are going to be doing it. So it's another opportunity, another attempt by Baldoni to harass non-party Isabela Ferrer and draw her deeper into litigation and disputes that she has done her best to avoid. This is Ms. Ferrer's first filing in this court, but she was pulled into the discovery fray in February 25 when Blake Lively delivered a subpoena to her to delve into allegations about Ms. Ferrer that Baldoni included in his original complaint. In response, Ms. Ferrer tendered a demand for indemnity to It Ends With Us movie as mandated in her contract for theatrical motion pictures. So the thing is she's already provided it to Blake. What is the problem with her just accepting a subpoena and providing it to him? What is the issue? If her bills are being paid, there's no dispute about that. What is her problem, basically? Her problem is that her attorneys, and this is the problem that she's caused herself now in going to this particular firm, who seem to reflect the Ezra Hudson style of legal documents and letters and the rest of it. It's equally that feeling of, this doesn't sound good, it sounds accusatory, it sounds victimy, it sounds blamey, and they're not. She's using an attorney that in effect is giving her the same problem that Blake's attorneys is giving her, which they don't present a very public friendly PR, whatever you want to call it, face. She's selected a law firm for herself, unfortunately, that just are unsavoury, just in the same way Manette seems to be unsavoury to the general public, and to be without wit and humour and all the rest of it. So it's kind of a mistake, really. So from that point forward, Baldoni has tried to manipulate, threaten, control and otherwise act inappropriately towards Miss Ferrer. So that's again giving him this opportunity to say Baldoni as an individual, even though it's talking about the wider parties, has done all these terrible things to Ms. Ferrer. In fact, Baldoni's legal team has gone as far as citing a phony case which Ms. Ferrer's counsel discovered as an AI hallucination to support a frivolous legal position. Well, if you found that, you'd just go back to him and say, can you actually find me one that's a proper citation, because we've discovered that seems to be like a, you know, I'm sure there's some legal entity of ChatGPT that they use in legal terms, I don't know, but it's like, it's a non-problem, really. It's not like somebody trying to pull the wool over your eyes. Just go back and ask them for a different one, like a human being, isn't it? But it did not stop there. The filing of the instant motion is yet another attempt to manipulate the press to create havoc on a young, up-and-coming and talented actress and to violate this court's policies on the publishing of non-party personally identifying information. Well, we've had this time and again now. Everybody's been doxed. Everybody's had it in the neck. There are rules in place now for going forward, but at the time Baldoni did that, it probably crossed with the judge's motion on that. And I think, although the judge had said earlier about, I've seen it somewhere today that the judge had said earlier about redacting addresses, but it didn't seem to be in his ruling the other day. I'm sure when I had read through that, I said it doesn't mention addresses here, it just says like phone numbers and emails, but that might be if you've made a ruling earlier. They've all been doing it. They're all guilty. Nobody gets to use it against somebody else as far as I'm concerned. They all should just not be doing it. It's a non-reason to stick it in here again. Isabella has been getting it in the neck for an awful long time because she hasn't just come out and said what a position on this was. So again, to my mind, it's her own choices. You know, she could have gone to... You see, I don't know what's in place in terms of any non-disclosures that anybody's signed or whatever, but to my mind, if that was me, I'd just go find some media source that seemed friendly, even if it was an independent, somebody in another country somewhere. I would just go have a sit-down interview with them, say how it is in a non-blaming, non-shaming way, what you experienced on the set, what you found with Justin Baldoni, what you found with Blake Lively, if both was good. Leave it at that. That's what I would do. You know what I mean? The best thing you can do if you're feeling harassed by the law is go around it in a way, you know, wherever you can. You know, my sister, and I never agreed with it at the time, but when one of her children was born, she refused to let the dad have any connection with it. She did the early stuff and then she said, nope, no more, not seeing him. And it's like, it was around that time when, you know, we were getting past this idea of dads don't have any rights and all of that. It was coming into play, you know, dads have, and she got away with it. You know, she kept getting threatened that, you know, if she didn't allow him, she'd go to jail and all of it kept on. Nothing came of it. She just sat it out, you know, said it's not going. I didn't agree with it at the time, but she got away with it. You know, it's like there are ways and means. You know what I mean? If you haven't committed an actual crime, you know, that could actually put you in jail, there are ways and means of sorting this stuff out. She's chosen the wrong way around this, I think you'd have to say. And she may have backed herself into a corner of some kind with Blake. But I think what she's missing here, that the absolute wrong move, she's not reading the room either, is she? And her law firm certainly isn't reading the room either. That she wants to have a career as an actress and have a name going forward that she can stand by. This isn't the thing to be doing, isn't it? You're not looking at what public are saying. You know, he's attached all of these snapshots of social media streams and stuff like that and articles as if to say, look what's been done to her. But he's not thinking that this response now, what he is doing now, will make sure there's even more of that kind of thing. You know, they're still not seeing that this isn't Wayfarer generated. It's public's, you know, the public optics. The public are looking at this stuff on the docket and making their own mind up about what it says about people. So if you've got a problem with what's there on the internet, problem enough to stick it on this letter, this filing, do you really think that's going to solve your problem? Do you really think that going forward, if you take the side that is going to call Justin Baldoni a harasser and an abuser, do you really think that is going to make sure that Isabela Ferrer has an acting career that has some longevity? Do you really think it's solving the issue that you've got at heart? Or shouldn't you be thinking that it makes more sense to just accept the subpoena, give him what he needs and have done with it, draw a line under it? You know, what is the problem to my mind here? Again, I'm a non-legal person, but it just beggars belief to me, and it's why I was feeling really angry. So the primary reason to deny the motion is that it fails to meet the applicable legal standards. So Blake Lively can ask for numerous times that she can have alternate service and stick it on somebody's LinkedIn messages and whatever else it is she's been allowed across the board. But somehow Justin Baldoni can't ask for it once that it's abusive. So failed to meet the applicable legal standard for the relief Baldoni seeks. Baldoni, and this is so off that he can do this, just keep saying Baldoni, Baldoni, as if Baldoni has done every single one of these things. Prematurely brought the motion without conducting the diligence necessary to support a motion for leave to serve a discovery subpoena on Ms Ferrer by means other than personal service. The motion discloses no efforts made by Baldoni to determine Ms Ferrer's actual residential or business address, nor does it offer a scintilla of evidence to demonstrate that Ms Ferrer has in any way attempted to avoid personal service of Baldoni's July 3rd subpoena. And the thing is, we've said before, Judge Lyman, when it comes to Katie Case and Brianna Coslow, and when it's come to Stephanie Jones, and they said, look, we provided all that information to Lively. If they wanted anything different at the time, Jones, then was the time to ask for it, not to ask us to do a separate production. And Judge Lyman turned around and said, yes, they could have asked you, but you could have asked them. That was his perspective on that both of them had culpability, and he sided with Jones Works on that. And it's like I said at the time, why, when somebody has equal say in terms of you could have asked them, or they, yeah, but they could have mentioned it, how do you pick a side? And Lyman picked a side. And it's a similar thing here. They could have given Wayfarer Isabella's address on any of those occasions they asked about serving her or asking them to accept service. So what's Lyman going to do here will be interesting. Is he, which side is he going to come down on? So, to the contrary, by responding to the Lively subpoena, Ms Ferrer has already proven that when faced with a valid subpoena in this matter, she will comply with her obligation. So why isn't she? Why isn't she then? There is no proper foundation to support the motion, and Baldoni's true motivations will be revealed herein. And the thing is, it's like I just said, I would not be sat here ranting about this if she'd just accepted service of a subpoena and just got on with producing what she's already produced to Britt Blake, and indeed less of it. So unfortunately the motion is just the latest. So it's just lovely, isn't it, that Justin's side is paying for Isabella's legal fees and she has complied with a subpoena for Blake Lively, but doesn't feel she should be served with a subpoena by him, basically, even though he's paying the bills, even though his company is paying the bills. This beggars belief to me. Does it beg a belief to you? Unfortunately, the motion is just the latest in a broader pattern of conduct by Baldoni to bully Ms Ferrer. Earlier Baldoni, and this is Isabela Ferrer, remember, who sent him the lovely text after production finished and sent him pictures that she'd taken off the camera, that she'd taken on set, and just ask for me whenever you need me, if you need me for anything else, kind of thing. Now he's bullying her. Earlier Baldoni tried to leverage compliance with contractual indemnity obligations owed to Ms Ferrer in an effort to take control. That's what we're saying, because it said, well, does that mean she's, in paying for her bills, we assume that she's part of the defence strategy in a way, if you're asking us to pay it, basically. So this guy's point of view is that she doesn't have to take a position, basically. She just needs to have her bills paid. That's the contractual obligation. So they've got a different perspective on it, I guess. And the law will say what the law will say on that, I guess. Baldoni then tried to leverage compliance with those same indemnity obligations as a quid pro quo for Ms Ferrer to instruct her attorney to accept service of the Baldoni subpoena on her behalf. Stated another way, Baldoni refused to honour contractual obligations unless Ms Ferrer agreed to certain demands. What, to have a subpoena served on her? Ms Ferrer rightfully refused to tie to tie her indemnity rights to any other issue in Baldoni's dispute with Lively, while Ms. Ferrer will faithfully comply with her legal obligations under any subpoena, summons or court order, she obviously will not be intimidated or extorted by any party to otherwise participate in the proceedings. Well, it could be argued that she's surrendered to Blake, couldn't it? She's quite clearly surrendered with no problem whatsoever to Blake's request, Blake's subpoena. But she has a problem with Justin's subpoena, even though he's paying. Finally, though, the motion does not directly raise the substance of the Baldoni subpoena. The court should consider it when determining whether to give Baldoni special treatment for the manner in which it is served. Honest to God, get over yourself, mate. Why don't you want the subpoena? Even the most cursory review of the Baldoni subpoena demonstrates its harassing nature. For example, it demands the production of all documents produced in connection with any subpoena in the action, so the stuff she gave Blake. There is no rational reason to demand that Miss Ferrer, who is not a party to this action, reproduce materials that have already been produced by her or others in this litigation. Well, presumably, when she was asked for that by Blake, it all got stored somewhere in the same area in somebody or other's computer or Google Drive or whatever means. So it's all there and all organised, ready to be used as in an ongoing way, because this is continuing. What's the big deal in producing it all again? In fact, in producing less of it for Baldoni. For all of these reasons, which are discussed at length below, Ms. Ferrer respectfully asks the court to deny the motion in its entirety and impose appropriate sanctions against Baldoni. So everybody wants sanctions against Baldoni and Brian Friedman for trying to do their job, basically. I don't really know whether to go into this whole... There's another 16 pages of it. Let me just pause this here. So what I'll read is just his declaration. I'm not going to read the whole of the other thing because I'm sure lots of other people will be poring over it. So I, Sanford L. Michelman, pursuant to 28 USC, blah, 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 declare as follows. I am an attorney admitted to practice in the state of California, and I am a partner at Michelman and Robinson LLP, Wilshire Boulevard. I represent Isabela Ferrer, who is not a party to this action, and neither are all of those content creators that everybody's caused an issue to. On February 25th, Blake Lively issued a subpoena for the production of documents to Ms. Ferrer, Lively subpoena. A true and correct copy of the Lively subpoena is attached to this declaration as Exhibit 1. Ms. Ferrer has a written contract with It Ends With Us movie, titled Day/Weekly Player Contract for Theatrical Motion Pictures, dated as of June 21st, 2023. Section 12H of the acting agreement provides in relevant part that it calls it, going forward, it just calls It Ends LLC, that's how he names it, indemnifies and shall keep the artist fully and effectually indemnified from and against any and all claims, demands, actions, proceedings, costs, damages, liabilities, losses and expenses, in brackets, including reasonable outside legal costs. And I think that term reasonable is important. Suffered or incurred by the artists arising out of any material uncured breach, non-performance or non-observance by It Ends LLC of any of the covenants, warranties, representations, undertakings and agreements of It Ends LLC contained or implied in this agreement, or arising in connection with the development, production or exploitation of the picture and all ancillary rights related thereto. And I would imagine there'll be a lot of scrutiny of that paragraph as to whether this Jams will sign off on some of these things, these invoices, because there has to be this question of how much of this is related to her conduct on the film and how much, like I said, is about what she allowed to happen to herself in her personal dealings with Blake Lively. I would imagine there's got to be some little deeper dive into that, really, and I imagine Wayfarer's side will be looking into that as to what can we say is actually stuff she's brought on herself by allowing herself to be influenced or whatever we believe you know, in terms of the fact we believe that she was influenced in some way, and I'm sure they do too. And it's a very difficult position for them, isn't it? Because here they are, again, having to pay her legal expenses, and they've no real knowledge of just how influenced she has been, or what she might say, or whether she could lie, or whether she's destroyed any documents. And I don't want to say that she's been doing any of those things, but you've got to see it from Wayfarer's perspective of having to pay for this girl's legal fees, knowing that she's provided everything that Blake Lively wanted, including in terms of whatever she may or may not have said to Ryan Reynolds, or whatever she knows of Mint Mobile and all of that. And the girl won't comply to their subpoena for very specific points that, you know, is just a case of handing over information that she's already handed over to Blake Lively. And here they are being called harassers and bullies again. On February 27, 2025, I sent notice on Ms Ferrer's behalf to It Ends LLC and Wayfarer Studios to demand that It Ends LLC indemnify Ms Ferrer for all costs and expenses. So that's what I read out to you, including her attorney's fees that she incurs in connection with her response to the Lively subpoena. A true and correct copy of my Feb 27th letter is attached to this declaration as Exhibit 2. And to my mind, basically this is... So the whole problem here, to my mind, is that it's basically gone to all these lengths purely to object to having a subpoena alternately served when he could just accept that subpoena. So basically what this guy is doing here is just taking what should have been a straightforward, how are we going to do this? We'll accept it on her behalf. He's not responded to them, so they've had to do this, or they've decided to do this. So really, did he not respond in order that he could then launch an attack on Wayfarer? Has this been some form of strategy? You know, to give them an opportunity to call Balder honey when it's actually the broader Wayfarer and everything, to keep saying Baldoni is a bully, Baldoni is accuser, Baldoni is a harasser. And then you've got to think, how did this girl choose this attorney? You know, and the thing is, if they don't want us talking about this stuff, mooting this stuff on social media and the rest of it, just be upfront. Just be upfront and clear. Do what's asked of you. If you're compelled to do something, just bloody do it, and don't play gamesmanship. You know, so on or about Feb 28th, I received a letter, 2025, I received a letter from Teresa Trampson, Counsel for It Ends LLC and Wayfarer, responding to my Feb 27th letter. A true and correct copy of Miss Troopson's letter is attached to this declaration. So that's what I read, and it didn't sound harassing or threatening or anything like that. I think all the Wayfarer communications are pretty polite. They don't get snotty or anything like that. In March 2025 and thereafter, I continued to negotiate with Mitra Ahurian, Counsel for It Ends LLC, over It Ends LLC's contractual indemnity obligations to Ms Ferrer. In a letter she sent to me late in the afternoon on Friday, April 11th, Ms Ahurian attempted to defend It Ends LLC's position that it could control Ms Ferrer's response to the Lively subpoena or dictate her counsel with citation to a case that does not exist. Did you, in what I read, did you see control anywhere? Control. And we said, just ask her for a different piece of case law then. The research we conducted at my firm indicated that the citation was likely to have been an AI hallucinated citation. Indicated that the citation was likely. So did they not prove it? After receiving the letter, I asked Ms Ahurian on at least 7 occasions, some verbal and some in written correspondence, to provide me with a copy of the cited case. She never did. My negotiations with Ms Ahurian dragged through April and May 2025. But that's not in, if what I've read you is what I've read you. So is that the protracted negotiations? Because there was barely anything, if that's what we're talking about. If there's more, is not attached that. During that time frame, I or others from my firm working at my direction asked for and received extensions of time from Lively's counsel to respond to the Lively subpoena. Well, all that says is that you were happy to comply with them, as long as they gave you extra time, that you had no problem complying with Lively's subpoena. So why have you got a problem complying with this one? Why are you not allowing them to even serve it? On or about May 27th, 2025, Ms. Ferrer and It Ends LLC finally entered into a written contract. And if they were asking for extensions of time from Lively's counsel, what are they saying here? I guess that was because they were trying to figure out the financing of it, was it? I don't know. On or about May 27th, Ms. Ferrer and It Ends LLC finally entered into a written contract submission agreement that set forth a process for Ms. Ferrer to submit her attorney invoices to a neutral, retired judge at JAMS to determine whether the services and fees billed are subject to indemnification under the acting agreement. Even with the submission agreement in place, It Ends LLC delayed in completing the necessary engagement agreement with JAMS and made additional demands on Ms. Ferrer. Is that just when they were saying, can you just clarify that, and then JAMS wants it this way? To me, there was nothing in those emails that was trying to be awkward, or am I reading it incorrectly? Am I just too innocent or something? You know what I mean? If Isabella's side had just come straight back, just spelling it out exactly how Wayfarer's side was asking them to spell it out, just in whatever language was necessary for this JAMS, that surely what just all went away. And when he's emailing somebody and asking them to do something that's like a fairly common practice, when is that harassment and bullying? On July 14th, while working to finalise and submit the JAMS engagement agreement, Ms. Ahurian sent me an email demanding that I accept service of subpoena issued by Justin Baldoni and others, Baldoni subpoena, on Ms. Ferrer's behalf. A true and correct copy of Ms. Ahurian's July 14th email is attached to this declaration as Exhibit 4. Yeah, she really did sound like a bully, didn't she, Mitra? She really, really, really bullying and harassing language, you know? That really came out during that email that I read out. On August 7th, after my firm submitted a partially executed copy of the JAMS engagement agreement to JAMS, Ms. Ahurian sent me and my partner, John Jameson Hill, emails demanding that we accept service of the Baldoni subpoena. They love that word, demand. A true and correct copy of the email exchanges with Ms. Ahurian on August 7th are attached to this declaration as Exhibit 5. Again, did you get that sense of it being really harassing and really demanding? On August 13th, Ms. Ahurian finally countersigned the JAMS engagement agreement and submitted it to JAMS. Attached to this declaration as Exhibit 6 is a copy of an article published by Us Weekly on August 13th titled Justin Baldoni Demands Blake Lively's Text with It Ends with Us co-star Isabela Ferrer. So what would be my thinking? Attached to this declaration as Exhibit 7 are copies of direct messages that Ms. Ferrer received on her social media account following the filing of the motion for leave to serve third-party Isabela Ferrer by alternative service. The messages are being partially redacted to protect privacy. So she got a little bit of, backwards and forwards of people saying, please just speak out, or, lost all respect for you to that, So it's like, but what has this to do with Justin's motion for alternative service? It's absolutely nothing to do with it. It's all about painting Justin Baldoni in a certain light. This has nothing to do with anything. They could have just accepted service. This is the absolute bloody limit. Honest to God. Attached to this declaration as Exhibit 8 is a printout from Reddit listing posts that were posted under the topic heading WF Party Attorney Request Alternative Service to Isabela Ferrer, declining to redact her personal addresses. So it's just saying, what we've all said over, they all should be redacting addresses, basically. So what has it to do with the accepting service? Just accept service, literally. If you've already given stuff to Lively's party, what's the problem in giving it to Justin's? There's absolutely no problem. Attached to this declaration as Exhibit 9 is a printout from Reddit listing posts that were posted under the topic heading Why Isabella Hiding? Again, who gives the stuff in regards to what is being asked here? It's nothing to do with it. A TikTok video discussing the motion and the residential addresses identified in the moving papers can be viewed at the following URL. Yeah, we know they've all been doing it. They've all been doing it to content creators too. Get over it. You know what I mean? Nothing to do with why you won't just simply accept service of a subpoena. Why you would rather do this. Makes you wonder if they're going to turn around and do a lawsuit on Justin Baldoni. And that's what all this is about. That he's going to have another lawsuit dumped on him. That wouldn't surprise me in the slightest. So you've got to kind of, they're absolutely doing exactly the thing that they supposedly don't want to be doing. They are making Isabela deeper and deeper into this crap by this kind of conduct. If they want to ruin her acting career, they've just done an awfully good job of it, as far as I'm concerned, because this is absolutely the wrong tactic. If you want the public to be talking less about Isabela Ferrer and this situation, this is exactly the wrong tactic to have used, because she more than anything, she needs to be above board and to be seen. She can be neutral. She can be neutral all she likes. Nobody's asking her to take a side necessarily. It's perfectly possible. It's like if you look at Taylor Swift's friendship group when she was friends with Blake. Taylor was like the island in the middle, if you like, and she had Selena Gomez on one side, didn't she, and Blake Lively on the other, and never the twain shall meet because they didn't like each other. Nobody's asking her. Nobody's saying that she couldn't have had good feelings about both and mixed feelings about both, but just be open and above board about it. And if you're going to give stuff to one party, give the same stuff to the other party. What's the problem there? So, God, what a thing to be dumped on. But what I was going to talk about, and it might make you laugh because it's almost likening Blake Lively to a serial killer. But this is how my mind was working over the weekend, because I happened to be watching True Story. I've not seen it before, so that's the movie with James Franco and Jonah Hill, and it's because bubbling around in my mind was this idea of free speech, and Baldoni's problem being that in trying to have free speech, he's been told he's retaliating and he's defaming and all of this. So this true story was based on this true case of Mike Finkel, that funnily enough was a New York Times journalist, and he got in trouble because he did this article about teenagers working for meager wages. I think it was the Ivory Coast. Yeah, they were on a cocoa plantation. So the movie starts where he's interviewing this young lad about his experience and beatings and such as that. But he kind of realises in the course of that interview that it's not really about that one boy, that it really is a conglomeration of various boys, that, he wants it to be about one boy's story because that makes it more powerful and impactful. But actually, these boys have kind of signed up for this work in order to have wages. It's kind of been a choice, in effect, not a choice to be treated that way, obviously, or want to be treated that way, but it's like a means to an end. So he put out this article that basically called it One Boy, as if this was all happening to one boy, but it was actually really, it cherry-picked elements of each boy's and landed it on one boy's identity, if you like. So, and it was a very successful article, but then he got caught because, like, some of the charities were saying that it's not about such and such a boy. So it kind of got in trouble. So what was weird, though, was that not much after that, there was this serial killer called Christian Longo that used Mike Finkel's identity when he went on the run after killing his wife and 3 children. I'd never heard of this story before, to my knowledge, unless I've forgotten it. But what was interesting was, like, the footnote at the end of the film was that this Christian Longo from prison has continued to be allowed, because he did get the death sentence, but it was commuted to life in the end. they must have brought out a ruling in Oregon, so everybody on death row got commuted to life. But this guy submits articles to the New York Times. He's allowed to do that he has done from time to time, according to the end segment on the movie. So I just was sat watching this, and it's just kind of fascinating to me that, like, even like like a mass killer, a man that kills his family, gets the free speech to continue to contribute articles to the New York Times. And again, the thing of the New York Times not fact-checking that article, just believing their journalist's story before putting out that slavery article in the first place. And kind of thinking, well, kind of that's what Megan Twohey did, wasn't it? That slammed that article out there, didn't give Just Inside a chance to refute it properly, didn't really care what the truth of it was, just liked the delicious juiciness of the story and that one perspective of it. Didn't really care what it did to anybody, or, kind of how Mike Finkel walked away from All Those Boys, really got what he wanted out of it, got the juicy story, the juicy scoop, and walked away. But yeah, in terms, and that's what's important, and that's why it was good the other day when an amicus brief went on, basically advocating, if you like, for the little people out there, the likes of you and me and the rest of us. Thomas Carver had put his own amicus brief on there the other day. So I'm just going to read off my notes because I've made quite a few notes, so forgive me if my head goes down, but it's just what I'd written last night as I was journaling a bit about it. It's very interesting as this case has become more and more focused on free speech, that content creators and Justin Baldoni and his team cannot speak out safely without being subpoenaed, or it being called retaliation or defamation, or having their text messages and emails slanted to fit a narrative. You know how Megan Twohey claimed to have looked at thousands of pages of documents, and yet look what we've seen come out that are being touted by Manat as if they're lively, they back Lively's story, and yet we see them and we think, what are you looking at? This looks really bad for Blake. It's clear they're not really focused on Blake as a problem. It's more, how do we protect the movie? How do we promote what Justin's wanting this to be seen for? How do we diffuse any negative stories that we know to be wrong or false? And that sense of surprise that it's all actually going their way when they haven't actually implemented anything that they might have had planned. So yeah, I just found that really, really interesting. And it's like I say about A Course in Miracles, sometimes we'll pop up with a real perler about this case. I thought, oh, that's so funny that I chose to watch that movie at that time. And so then I kind of went off and had a little deep dive on Christian Longo and what kind of narcissism it was that he had. Because I've all along said that no matter what Blake projects in terms of, I totally believe, one of the reasons that I disbelieve the SH thing is because we know she's no wallflower in terms of opening her mouth and demanding what she needs, or reporting somebody for SH that was doing a makeup on a previous set and stuff like that. We know she's no problem shutting something down, so we know she would have no problem if she genuinely was SH'd doing something about it, because she's done it in the past when she wasn't. So but I still do believe that behind it all is this vulnerability, because she's never had any knockbacks in life as such. We're very much aware, and other people have said it, including the director of the rhythm section, have said she doesn't take no for an answer. She doesn't hear that word. She's very ambitious, very dedicated, very like bull in a china shop, if you like. So I kind of had a look at, at what this Christian Longo's type of narcissism was, and it came up with that he was kind of diagnosed as compensatory narcissism, so which is kind of similar to a vulnerable or a covert narcissist. Bear in mind, I'm not a narcissist expert when I talk about these things. So they appear confident, but they actually do have low self-esteem and quite deep insecurity. And this is what I do feel about Blake, because she's never had to prove herself, you know, in a way, and she's been handed things. But they also do have that grandiosity as well, that self-importance as a facade. And they need admiration. They need lots of admiration, and they need that external validation all of the time. So anybody that's a partner of them, they have to be constantly being bigged up. You know, we've seen kind of that she needed that from Justin. She wanted, you know, and he felt he had to do that. I think he was Etienne's about to play with someone. He was constantly having to boost her up, wasn't he, and big her up and pat her on the head for the daily work and things like that. And people have pointed out, like Eldritch and such, you know, that whole onesie scene where he suggested that she wanted it to look sexy, as she'd wanted the character to be sexy, then the best idea was to take the big coat off and align with what everybody else was doing, you know, and she objected to that. But there was that thing of, at the same time, he pointed out she had something in her teeth. Well, that would have been the triggering thing, wouldn't it? Even more than the onesie thing would be, don't criticise me in public, don't point out a flaw. That cannot be handled, you know. And this is where she's had a problem with Justin, is that if he's just been open and honest all the time and he just says things when it occurs to him, or if he sees something that needs correcting in the course of work, he's not always been thinking it always has to be a positive to this woman. You know, it can't be, even the tiniest thing that may be perceived to be negative cannot be pointed out to this woman, you know, because she's not going to take it. I think there's been some of that going on as well. So yeah, I just thought, I don't want to liken Blake to a serial killer. I'm just going to pause it there while I just finish looking at my notes. And I've also got to watch it, because while I was doing this, I was also writing some hypnotherapy script things for myself, some ideas that were popping into my head. So I don't want to inadvertently start hypnotising you while I read through some of this stuff. But I think the last thing, because I went off and looked at a couple of articles about the case as well, just to get more of the mindset. And there was a quote from the Oregon District Attorney, Josh Markey, I don't know how you pronounce it, that was on the cbsnews.com website. And his quote was, "One of the things about con men, and Christian Longo is a con man, is they can't stay off the stage. So coming up with some bizarre story, which then they want to be able to say, they want to be able to convince people of, becomes almost pathological." And I think with the best will in the world, that's what we kind of see here, isn't it? That the story gets more and more bizarre and starts becoming never-ending and ongoing and all of the rest of it. And she needs more and more information from more and more people, because this story can't go away. She can't just, you know, turn this story off. It's become this pathological thing in her head. There is no reasoning with it at this point. And I think it just struck me that it was so similar in many ways, and how you can't deal with these kinds of people because the cogs are always turning in their head. They're always churning out something else. Because this guy, Christian Longo, part of it was that he enjoyed this idea of having people on the hook of not truly knowing what had happened to his wife and children. Because at one point he changed his story and said he killed the wife and the baby, and the wife had killed the two other children. He threw up a curveball in court by confusing the issue. And it pulls people in, doesn't it? You know what I mean? It's like, we all hate unanswered questions. So for years he kept going backwards and forwards on his story. Did he kill 2 of them? Did he kill 4 of them? What is his motivation? At one point he claimed to have gained some empathy and all of this business. But, you never... Because they enjoy this process. They enjoy having people on the hook. They enjoy having eyes on them and intrigue and being the source of attention. And it's like we said before, it often doesn't matter whether it's bad or good, or how much it hurts or how much it destroys, and the rest of it. And I think it's pretty sad state of affairs, really, that Isabela has decided to go down the same route in hiring this particular firm and agreeing to tackle it in this same vein as Blakey's, that she's not had the foresight to see that this way of going about it is not going to enhance what social media and your average person thinks of her. It's not going to solve the situation that she got herself into. I don't know what you think. You tell me your thoughts and opinions. This has been another long one. I don't want to do an hour and 20-minute presentations, but it had to be a long one today. It was going to be a more ethereal one today till that dropped on the docket. But I just think, I can't help but feel just so sorry for Justin that he can't even ask for a simple thing that Blake Lively has already had without having more harassment and abuse and bullying accusations dropped on him and more potential threats of lawsuits, just for trying to sort out the mess that he didn't create. Anyway, you tell me your feelings. Drop me a comment and a like. Subscribe and share if you can. Really appreciate you all. And I will see you again soon. Bye bye.